What's up, everybody? We are back. This is going to be poker vlog number 14, and today no 510. We're going to go in here. It's actually early. I had an appointment to run to earlier. It's 10:12 right now, so place just opened up 12 minutes ago. Most likely going to jump into some 1-3 and then move up to 2-5 as that table opens, hopefully. But either way, going to give you guys some good content, more than likely, and I'm ready to get to it. I'm kind of toying with the idea of increasing my upload frequency to sometimes twice a week. Let me know what you guys think. Would like to get the channel growing a little bit more, and it's been a little while since I thanked all of you, but you all are very much appreciated. All my subscribers, everyone that watches these, truly appreciate it. If you're watching this for the first time, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. A lot more content to come. We have fun on this channel. And without further ado, I'm gonna go in here. I'm ready to play some poker. I'll see you at the table. So we get right into it here. Tough table, regulars and pros all around. And you know how we get down. We open it up with a bomb pot. We have ace, ace, 6, 8. We hit a diamond draw on the bottom board and some, I don't know, some other possibilities on the top board. Anyway, somebody bets $50. 4 of us end up going to a turn card. So $280 in the middle. And we hit the nut flush on the bottom board. Life is good. And we also hit a straight up on the top board, so good chance that we are good on both boards. And I want to keep kind of everybody in there. I bet $150 when it checks to me with 4 of us in the pot. I would like multiple people to call since, unless the board pair is on the bottom, we are definitely going to be taking that one. So trying to get as many people in there to make the chop at the end as profitable as possible. I bet 150, and then unfortunately, we only get one caller, so kind of the opposite of what I wanted to happen. If I'm only getting one caller, I would rather everyone just fold. So yeah, one caller across the table there, and then everyone else folds, and we go heads up to a river card, which I plan on barreling to blow my opponent off a chop. Pretty much any cards that come out at this point. Hopefully the board doesn't pair. And we get a clean run out on both boards from the looks of it. A 3 of hearts on the bottom and queen of clubs up top. Shouldn't change much. Good chance, like I said, that I am ahead on both boards with a pretty big pot brewing here. I decide I have no choice. Even if I had nothing on the top board, I would still go ahead and pot size this river. I bet pot and my opponent calls, and then unfortunately he does have a higher straight up on the top board, and we obviously are not in any danger of losing the bottom, but we make a decent little profit to start off the session, and we are moving on to the next hand of Hold'em. This next hand, we are definitely not playing the stand-up game. There is a straddle on as well, and I look down at pocket eights. I raise it up to $40. Everyone is eager to not play the stand-up game, and we get 3 callers. So we go 4 ways to a flop, which comes 6, 9, king with 2 spades. So not the best flop, being so multi-way, but I guess it could be worse. And I'm definitely not going to be barreling into 3 other people. So when it checks to me, I check it over to the button who decides to check it back. So that's a good sign. And the turn pairs the board with another 6. So honestly, I think this is a pretty good card. Since it checked all the way through and it checks to me again on the turn, I think I'm going to be betting here to get rid of my, or I guess so I can sit down since we're not playing the stand-up game, full disclaimer. So I decided to bet out $60, try to sit myself down, not have to pay any extra penalties to the table mates here. And everyone folds, it's looking good. And then a guy who is pretty much a complete maniac over there on the top right raises me to $300. Man, this game definitely is a call to action. And I go into the tank for quite a while when next act folds, and it's just on me. I think a lot of the times I can have the best hand here, but also this opponent, if I call this, he's probably just going to keep barreling on the river with any two cards. Not a great situation, but I think I can pick a better spot. I decide to fold and then instantly get shown the bad news. When he shows pocket threes, he has to show to be able to sit down, and we get bluffed on this one. This is an opponent that I typically just call down, and I've lost money and won money from him in the past doing so. This time, I felt I could just pick a better spot. I folded, bad fold, but what can we do? We still have a mission to accomplish in being able to sit down. Moving on to the next hand. So we're still standing up here. It folds to me in later position. We look down at what looks like to me pocket aces. Might as well be here. King Jack offsuit. We decide to bump it up to $30. Try to get some fold equity. Doesn't quite work though. We get two callers and we're going three ways to a flop, which comes a little bit more than ideal. Queen, 6, king. We hit top pair, jack kicker, and I am prepared to just pile money into this pot here with being able to sit down, being able to win a pot. So when it checks to me, I decide to bet out for $60. Guess given the circumstances, I could go a little bit bigger here, but honestly, I don't really hate a call at this point. There's a lot of worse hands that I can get value from. So when I bet out $60, one person decides to put in the call, next act folds, so going heads up to a turn card, liking our chances here. And it comes a nice one with a 5 of hearts, so flush draw on the board, 5 shouldn't really change much. And he checks it over to me. I decide I'm going to just slightly size up. Still want to give him a good price. Like I said, I don't hate a call as much as I'd love to win this hand and just get it over with. I bet out $150 going for value. He doesn't think long before he puts in the fold, and we comfortably sit down and move on to a less stressful next hand. Couple people still standing, so action's good. Early position raised to $30. I call with pocket eights in the small blind, and then the big blind squeezes to $100. I'm definitely not going to be folding, especially when the big blind is one of the fellas still standing. So we go three ways to a flop, which comes pretty decent. 4, 3, 9, 2 clubs out there. I'm going to check like I would with any cards in my hand here. And then the big blind jams all in for $900. And next act, doesn't think about it. He folds, and I go into the tank. At this point, there's quite a few people around the table looking at me. And I just got bluffed with pocket eights, the exact same hand. And this guy can definitely be a loose cannon sometimes. And he's definitely motivated to get rid of his button here so he can sit down himself. And I am just in the tank. I am questioning what to do. I'm obviously not getting great odds if I'm wrong, but like really, he just has it on this board and he happens to be standing up and has incentive to sit down. I mean, I have a good hand when all that comes into play. And I think about it for quite some time. I think again I can just pick a better spot. Ultimately decide to fold with a sigh, and he shows pocket queens, and I say, thank God. Good fold. Enough of the nonsense. Let's move on to some real poker. This next hand's kind of interesting. There is a straddle on. I am first to act. The straddle is under the gun. I bump it up to $40. The big blind comes along for a call. And then back over on the straddler, who is a fun action player. Also a very good player. And once it gets around to him, he decides to bump it up to $140. With my hand being so strong, I'm definitely not going to be folding. I think I'm not going to put in a 4-bet here, although I think there's some merit to it. If I was suited, I would consider it, but I decided to just put in the call, see what happens on the flop, and then the big blind actually comes along with the call as well. So, yeah, 3 ways to a flop here with 2 pretty action guys, and let's see what happens. The flop does not come ideal. 3, 6, 3. Really, nothing going for us here on this board at all. The big blind checks. It's on the under the gun, who is a pre-flop aggressor. He bits out $175. And like I said, this guy is definitely more than capable of having a lot of bluffs here. And I'm not going to be folding just yet. With 2 overs, I can definitely afford to float here. And then the big blind comes along with a call as well. So still 3 ways to a turn card, which comes a beautiful queen of diamonds. Best case scenario when you're floating that you can hope for, even if he has ace king, I'm ahead. So it checks over to him again, and he decides to throw out a pretty healthy bet sizing here. He bumps it all the way up to $455. And I'm just sitting here thinking what to do now. Obviously here, I'm never folding. I floated for this exact scenario to happen, so folding is off the table. I look at my stack and realize I think I have like $900 in my stack or so. So I don't really see a big point in calling and leaving like a very small stack left compared to the pot. I decided to just rip it all in for around $900 effective. And I think, like I said, calling would be just fine if I was a little bit deeper, if I felt I could get a lot more money from just calling and bringing both opponents along. But 3 ways with my stack size, I decided to just rip it all in. And everyone seems interested in this pot. If they have something, then, they're going to call. And if he has aces or kings, just take my money. Back over on the next act, the big blind, who thinks for quite a while. When he's thinking, I think he's just has like some sort of pocket pair between a 6 and a queen and wants to maybe be a non-believer. He thinks about it for, I don't know, maybe 45 seconds or so. Eventually, he decides to put in the slow fold. It's on the next act, who looks at his cards, quickly folds them, and we take down a monster pot here, scooping around $1,500. And yeah, like I said, would have liked to have been a little bit deeper stack so I could just put in the flat call, leave all lesser hands in there. But being my stack depth, I think ripping it in is just fine. And the pot was plenty big enough for ace queen to take it down. Feeling good, and moving on to the next hand. This hand we're in later position. I think the hijack folds to me. I look down at ace jack offsuit, nothing to do but raise it up to $20. The button calls and the big blind comes along for a call as well. So 3 ways to a flop of deuce, 9, 6. So very non-connecting flop for our cards. When it checks to me, I go ahead and decide to check it over to the button, who doesn't think long, throws out a simple 1-bet chip bet of $25. The next act puts in the fold, and like I would do with a lot of hands here, I'm just going to float with ace jack. I put in the call, heads up to a turn, which it's like deja vu. We hit a pair, top kicker with the jack of hearts. I'm going to keep under-repping my hand for now into this opponent. He is a fellow professional who's a pretty good player, definitely capable of barreling here with diamond draw, things like that, maybe a straight draw. And he decides to keep on blasting here. He goes for a bet of $90. He always sizes up on the turn with his bluffs and with his value hands. It is just pretty tough to have a value hand on this board. A lot more semi-bluffs than value bets here. So I decided not think long, put in the call to $90. Little pot ballooning up here, and we go heads up to a river card, which comes the 2 of hearts. So does not change anything. Still have top pair, top kicker, I guess top 2 pair now you could call it. And I decide to check it over to him. I think about betting here, but I don't really see a point. Just going to let him keep bluffing if he has some bluffs in his range. Like I said, very few value hands out there, especially now that another 2's on the board. Tough to flop a set, even tougher to hit quads. So feeling pretty comfortable. I would have imagined, I definitely would have heard a 3-bet with pocket 9s before the flop since I raised in later position. And that was not the case. So very few value hands, like I said. And this opponent has a pretty sloppy chip shuffle, according to you guys. You guys have seen him on the vlog before, top left. And he is hastily shuffling his chips and grabs a chunk of hundreds and puts out a bet of $400. So very big bet sizing here compared to the size of the pot. Polarizing his range. He is very well studied, very affluent professional player. Basically saying he has everything or he has nothing. And really the only hands I can see him having are pocket 6s. Don't think he has quads. Very rare for that to happen. And like I said, very rare to flop a set. So way more bluffs than value hands here. But nonetheless, pretty chunky bet sizing. This guy is definitely more than capable of going 3 streets on a bluff. Not a great spot. There's just way too many bluffs that he would have compared to value hands. And I even say out loud that you either have pocket sixes or absolutely nothing. So after some time, I decide to put in the call and immediately am happy with my decision when he says,
Vote.
nice one.
Thank you.
He flips over the pocket sixes and we get totally owned. Against a lot of people, I would fold this, but he, like I said, he's a pro, more than capable of barreling off here. So he takes us to a harsh, relentless trip to Value Town, and we get totally owned here, losing a pretty massive pot. But sometimes that's just the way it is. No need to sit and sulk. Nice hand, buddy. This next hand, we missed all the pre-flop action pretty much. There was so much of it. I looked down at pocket kings, and their straddle is on. There's a raise under the gun to $35 from a very tight player. Like 3 people call, and I look down at pocket kings, and I'm like, oh my god. So I decide to squeeze, obviously. Not going to be flat calling this, despite the under the gun type player raising. Don't care. I raise it up to $160. Could have even gone a little bit bigger. It folds around to him, and he ships it all in for right around $400. And everyone else folds. I put in the snap call, obviously, and he says, do you want to run it once or twice? I try to keep it friendly, as always, and say whatever you want to do. So we decide to run it 2 times. Looking to fade an ace on the board. Think he'd be doing this with ace-king. Hopefully not aces, but we don't show yet. And there are no aces on either board. Run out is all clean, being heads up. He looks at me, shakes his head. I flip over the pocket kings, and we scoop this one, winning another massive pot, unfortunately for him, stacking our opponent, and winning back pretty much all the money that we just lost in the pot before, and on to the next one. And we are in later position. We look down at the beautiful ace-jack of diamonds. There is a straddle on. I raise it up to $35 and then get 3-bet to my left to $90 by an opponent who I have not seen get too active. If this was not suited, I would probably fold, but I like playing suited Broadway, so I put in the call, and especially getting a good price to only $90, and we go heads up to a flop, which we pretty much completely whiff with 9-3-9. There is 1 diamond out there, though. I do have 2 overs and an ace in my hand. So when he bets out $75, again, I'm just going to float this and possibly look for some bluffs down the road if I need to, which brings us to a turn card, which is, of course, the Jack of Spades. And we hit top pair, top kicker again. This has made me some money and lost me some money. I check, and he quickly checks back, oddly enough. And the miracle card on the river, the Ace of Hearts. I love this card. I think I actually prefer this more than a Jack because it's now easier for me to get paid. I know he doesn't have any 9s, and he could have definitely been playing Ace-King this way, or maybe he just has some pocket queens, pocket kings that won't be non-believers. Either way, I bet out $175, giving him a good price with Ace-King, pocket queens, pocket kings, whatever he might have. He thinks about it for quite a while, and you can tell he's in some discomfort. I know I'm not going to get raised, so I know he doesn't have ace-king. I'm praying that he calls with what are most likely queens, kings, etc. And kind of feel bad. I mean, I went runner, 2 pair here, and but that's the way it is. I've also gotten stacked being on the other end of this. He puts in the call. I flip over the ace-jack, and he is disgusted. Understandably so, mucks his cards, and we take down a pretty decent-sized pot. Moving on to our last 2 hands here. Pre-flop action, raise under the gun to $30 over a straddle. I look down at ace-king offsuit, so clearly put in the 3-bet to $105. And the straddler on the button cold calls, and then the original raiser comes along as well. Off 3 ways to a flop, with not too much going on for us. Queen 5 jack, all rainbow. First act checks, and I think about betting, but I think a queen and jack are going to connect pretty well with calling a 3-betting range, so I decide to check, and then the button checks back as well, which is good news. The turn brings a board pairing 5 of hearts, and when it checks to me again, I'm thinking, like, really, no one has connected with this at all? I decide I need to take a stab at it. I do have a draw to 2 overcards or a 10. I have a little bit of equity here. Or, I mean, yeah, sometimes I could have the best hand, I guess. Or fold out some weaker pocket pairs. And everyone folds. So we miraculously get this through and scoop a pretty decent little pot. My phone in real time ran out of storage, so I did not get to record the last hand of the session. But basically, the straddle is on as it's been all freaking day long. I am in later position with 10 of hearts and 10 of clubs. There's one limp, and I raised to $40. Everyone seems interested in playing, or I've lost a lot of respect over the session because I get 4 calls. And we go 5 ways to a flop with pocket 10s. Not loving it, but that's what it is. And the flop ends up coming 9, 7, 6, 2 clubs, 1 diamond. And what do we do here? It ends up checking to me in later position. With any raise pre-flop here on this board, especially being multi-way, I'm going to check this. That's what I do. I decide to check over to the button, who decides to bet out $120. So pretty powerful move betting into that many people with over a half size pot bet. And surprisingly, it folds all the way around to me. And I have pocket 10s, I have an overpair, straight draw, some backdoor clubs. I'm definitely not going to be folding, as you guys can probably assume at this point. So I put in the call for $120 and we go heads up to a turn card, which puts the flush on the board with the 3 of clubs. And this is an interesting card. I still like my hand. I don't think he would have been betting into this many people with a flush draw. He's a recreational player, definitely. Not a pro like I've played against in the last couple hands, but definitely a recreational player. And I think he has a pretty good hand, like maybe 2 pair, or it's kind of hard for me to see an airball bluff here. But anyways, I check it over to him, and then he decides to continue on for $200, which is very weird, right? Like, and I even say out loud, the flush doesn't deter him at all, huh? And I think about it for a moment, and as I look over at him, he looks like he is overly confident, like he's trying to put a story together here, making eye contact with me, like when really I should be sizing him up. He's looking at me like sizing me up. And to me, anybody that's played poker long enough or, at a high enough level, it's kind of a tell that they're usually not that strong. So I'm definitely not going to go anywhere. I do have the 10 of clubs in my hand, an overpair. Like I said, still have the flush draw, and kind of odd that he is still betting, but put in the call for $200, heads up to a river card, which is beautiful with the 8 of hearts, giving me the straight. And I think about betting this, and as I think about betting, I look at my opponent's stack and realize something I didn't notice. He only has like $275 behind. So yeah, I would have just put him all in on the turn if I saw he was that shallow with all the equity I have. Could have been a punt. I could definitely be up against 2 pair or a set or even a straight. But nonetheless, with the 8 of hearts, I decide to check it over to him, and he says, I'm all in, and throws in his last $275. And as I'm looking at him again, it just looks like he's trying to look overly confident. He is trying to sell me on a story of some kind, but, realistically, this board run out has just not been good for anyone who had a good hand on the flop. And he's trying to sell me this story. I have been cutting expenses lately, and I decide I ain't buying it. I stick in the call, and as soon as I do, he says, damn it, and mucks his cards, and we flip over the 10-10 for the straight, and we are good. So because he mucked his cards, obviously he had a complete airball. Definitely a punt by him. No need to be doing that on such a scary board. But luckily, being a calling station finally paid off this time. After this hand, we go ahead and rack it up, head to the register, and call it a session. You know what time it is. Time for a low quality outro here. again, past dark. Feel like a total degenerate, played for 11 hours today. But it was a good day. It was very swingy, felt very long. Brain feels a little bit mushy, but ended up coming out on top for a profit of $1,050 or so. I don't know. I'm sure I put it in the video by now. But yeah, 11 hours, made a little bit over $1,000. Definitely a solid day and a somewhat swingy session. Feels good to come out on top and win some big pots at the end. Making some difficult call downs. That's just what you got to do sometimes. But before I blabber on too long, I'm going to end this video. Hope you guys love the content. Appreciate you as always, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.